This is News 24 Live. I'm Erin Bates, and in studio with me today is John Schooling, who's the Director of Student Accommodation at Stag African. Afternoon, John.
Afternoon, Erin.
Hi. John, it's been a week of a lot of debate and dispute over student accommodation, and you yourself work in an industry in providing student accommodation for universities. Is this a good time to be knocking on doors and pitching for business?
Absolutely, Erin. I don't think there's any surprises about the fact that we have the situation that we have at the moment. This has been coming for quite a few years. In actual fact, there's been a massive underspend in tertiary education since 1993, in actual fact. And only in 1999 did we start picking up the amount of spend. So the shortfall in student accommodation has been coming for quite a long time, I must say.
So no surprises for you when Shackville happened at UCT and it escalated into a kind of face-off between police and students?
I thought initially the whole concept of Shackville was quite ironically correct, in the sense that a lot of students are living in shacks. Unfortunately, it did actually escalate out of all kind of control and actually went in the wrong direction. But I think the symbol of the shack was actually very, very good, I felt.
Quite
Because
powerful.
a lot of our students are very, very powerful, I must say. And I thought it was actually just a touch of genius, in actual fact. It just unfortunately unraveled from then onwards. So it was a smart idea that went completely wrong. The reality is, though, that a lot of our students are living in shacks right now. And I don't think that's exactly conducive to educational excellence, I must say.
So let's just zoom in on Stag African for a moment. What is it that you do in terms of student accommodation?
We've been involved in student accommodation since 2009, when we identified that student accommodation was, generally speaking, unaffordable. So we approached it from the perspective of saying to ourselves, well, how can we get to build world-class student accommodation and make it affordable? So since 2009, we've been focusing very much on it. We found that there were only 2 or 3 places where you could really save money to make it affordable. And those 2 places were, we looked at optimal architectural design. We asked the question, what is student accommodation? What is the optimal design for student accommodation? We traveled around the world, and I think we've come up with a solution to that. We really believe that we have got it. The important thing about designing student accommodation is that every square inch, every square meter is critically important to the overall cost. So you've got to get the design right. So the number one first step was get the design right. Then we started saying, okay, if we carry on using bricks and mortar, the escalation, the cost of building is going to be on average between 8 and 12% per annum. So is there an alternative to bricks and mortar that could possibly bring the cost down? And that's when we discovered a product called Innovative Building Technology, which is innovative and new in South Africa, but has been used internationally for over 80 years. And the type of technology that we use is called lightweight steel framing.
Okay, so is it a steel structure that you then fill in with sort of light hardboard or something like that? How does it work?
It's a lightweight steel frame, which is then clad with various kinds of products. The products that we use at the moment are totally and completely green. The building methodology is probably the greenest form of building in the entire world. And in actual fact, the CSIR has rated it very, very highly. They found that, for example, a funny little thing is that the amount of electricity that's used to cool down or warm up our buildings to ambient temperature is between 82 and 83% less than a standard building. So, we started off looking for a way of saving money. We've ended up discovering a product that could actually help us save the world. So it's very interesting that we're suddenly using the greenest technology in the construction industry that you can possibly use.
I suppose my question then is, around the business of student accommodation, do you see the market growing as more and more students migrate from maybe underdeveloped areas, rural areas, or, further flung fields in Cape Town, for example, places like Langa, Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, coming into places like Stellenbosch or Cape Town in order to study, Bellville for UWC? Is that really where the market, the demand for this accommodation comes from?
Urbanization is an absolute reality, and the majority of our students are in actual fact in urban areas. While there's a huge problem at our urban universities, the biggest problems actually exist in our rural universities. Because if you're not on campus, in good accommodation on campus, you have no alternative when you're out in the middle of nowhere. For example, at Alice, if I may use that as an example, if you aren't on campus, where are you going to stay? There's a very good chance you stay in an RDP house, and very often, very far away from campus, and very often a lot of students per bedroom. So if you're not on campus, on campus good accommodation, then you're going to be really struggling, especially in the rural areas. But the problem is as acute at UCT, for example, as we've seen recently, and in our urban areas.
I wonder, I don't know if you would know this, but with the Sol Plaatje Institute that was built up, do you know if they've made a plan to include the accommodation as it rolls out to try and avoid some of the problems at these older universities?
They're very conscious of it, especially in the last few years. But at the moment, I know that they're busy building the academic buildings. They haven't focused yet on the student accommodation.